The only issue in this tutorial, and the thing I'm not going to be covering, is the S's. So for example, if it was 1 day, you wouldn't want this S suffix, you'd just want 1 day. But you know, I'm not going to include that in the tutorial. It's probably something you can go ahead and do in your own time, just to sort of give you a little challenge. So now that we've done this form, we don't really need to touch anything on this main page, because ext.js is going to call the countdown plugin, and it's going to apply it to this countdown div. So let's go ahead, and inside here we want to say document.ready, and remember, this is the file that's just going to be calling our plugin as opposed to actually, you know, performing this functionality. So document, and we're appending the ready handler. Once this is ready, we're going to run everything inside of here, and that is selecting our countdown div using the hash, because we're selecting by ID. We're going to say countdown dot and then countdown. Now countdown is the name of our plugin. For now, I'm not going to specify any options or callback function in here. We're going to do that at each stage of creating our plugin itself. So we'll leave that for just a moment. Now let's go over to countdown.jQuery.js and actually start creating the plugin. Now notice that I've got this included here, and then I've got ext.js included here as well. Just make sure that this one here comes after jQuery, because obviously it needs to take advantage of jQuery. So let's go ahead and start to outline our function. If you've already looked at creating functions, this will be quite, you know, you'll be quite familiar with the code here, but what we're essentially saying is function in brackets entirely with the $sign here. This is just the notation that we're going to be using, and inside these curly brackets, which we're going to bring down, we're going to give a name to our function and create everything to do with it. However, just after here we want to say jQuery, and this allows us to use notation in a different way. For example, $.fn dot and then our function name. So before we would have to use jQuery like this. Here we can just use a $sign. So $.fn, and we want to call our function, remember, countdown. So that's quite basic. We just write countdown. It tells us what we want to do, etc. And what we're going to do is we're not going to supply parentheses. Sorry. What we're going to do is we're going to say equals function. Now everything inside of here will be our plugin code. So at the moment, what I want to go ahead and do is just alert out working. Now what's going to happen is inside ext.js, because we're making use of this plugin, as long as we've declared everything properly, we'll just have an alert box come out. So let's refresh, and you can see that we've got the alert box working. So we know that our plugin declaration is working, and we can go ahead and start to write the rest of our code. Now the first thing we want to do is allow the user to give some options into this, and that option is specifying the date that they want to count down to. So we're going to be using date.parse, and this is going to take a string date and it's going to convert it into a timestamp. So for example, I could write the 10th of August 2011 at 12 o'clock and 30 seconds, just as an example. This would be a way that we could write out a date which would then be converted into a timestamp. So we want to allow the user to specify this date inside the plugin as we call it. So let's go ahead and just inside of here choose an options parameter. Now we want to go ahead and set a list of settings that we can merge with these options, and this will be an array of default values that we apply to each option that we allow our user to give. So I'm going to create an array called settings, and inside here I'm going to say date, and the default value is going to be null, because I want the user to actually be able to specify a date. I don't want this countdown script to work if we don't specify a date, and later on we're going to do a check to see if this date value is equal to a number, or if it's not. NaN in JavaScript, NaN like written like this with capital N and capital N here, which stands for not a number. So we want to make sure that this date is a number as well. However, we'll be handling the validation a bit later. Okay, so now we want to extend these settings into our options, where essentially what we're doing is taking options from the user, and if they do exist, we are merging them with this here. So we'll essentially just be merging the date, this string here, into this value here. So date then equals the right, setting. So we're going to say if options, has the user specified any options at all? So here, And I'm doing all this in one line, but feel free to bring it down and indent it if you wish. I'll probably go ahead and do that just so it looks a bit better. Then we're going to say $, again using $, as opposed to jQuery, because this is how we set up our function. So $.extend, and we want to choose our array and then the options that we've passed in. So this is settings and options. So we've now extended our settings to our options, and we've merged the value here and replaced this null value here. So now what we can do is access our settings through that array. So down here I'm just going to go ahead and alert out settings, and because we're using an array we need square brackets, and I'm going to say date. So we're getting this value here that's been merged with the options that we passed through. Let's go ahead and refresh, and you can see that we have that string that string date there.